Hello everybody. Good afternoon. Nice you're here. We're going to talk about our circular project approach today. And we'd like to start off with a little movie clip. So does anybody has seen this clip before? Yeah? Anybody else? No? You know SpaceX, right? Yeah. Well, there are two things I like about this clip. And the one thing is that SpaceX has a goal, a great goal, to go to Mars. And you heard a voice under the clip. And does anybody know whose voice that was? The US president. Which one? It's a good guess. It was John F. Kennedy. And it was more than 60 years ago. When I said SpaceX has a goal, John F. Kennedy had a goal 6 years ago. And his goal was to go to the moon in the end of the decade. And when he said this, it was 1962. And when the first man was on the moon, it was 1969. So he had 7 years to saying something like that and going to the moon. An interesting thing is with sustainability that we have a goal in 30 years from now, 2050, to be 100% sustainable. And we're far from that goal. And that's an interesting thought. The other thing I find very interesting is the thing he said about knowledge and ignorance. And that is this saying. We live in an age of both knowledge and ignorance, and the greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. And I think that applies still today if we talk about sustainability. Because there's a huge problem, and I think we don't recognize it enough that we have to do something about it. So this is, has everybody seen this before? It was in the beginning of the corona pandemic, and we said to each other, well, we'll be sure you wash your hands well and everything is going to be okay. Well, that was more than 2 years ago, and we all know how it unfolds. So we don't see the problem good enough, I think. This image explains that the waves keep coming at us. And here they talk about recession. We're on the edge of war with Russia, Europe. So the problems keep on coming, and it's very important to keep our mind on the goal, and that is that we want to be sustainable in 30 years from now, in less than 30 years from now. So there's a little myth and I don't know if you know it, but the myth says that if you put a frog in a pan of boiling water, it will jump out because the water is too hot and he doesn't like it, so he jumps out. But if you put the same frog in a pan of cold water and you put the pan on the stove and you heat the water up, the frog will sit in the pan till it's dead. It's boiled to death because he doesn't recognize the heat building up, and it eventually will die. So we are that frog today because the Earth is heating up, and we doesn't see the change right away, but the change will come, and we have to be prepared of that. So that in mind, we said with our company we have to do something about it, and we have to do it in the things we do in our company. And we do projects. We are project managers, both of us. And we said we had to create a circular project approach to be a sustainable company and do sustainable things in our projects. And today we want to tell you how we do that. Well, my name is Simon. I'm a project manager in daily life, and I'm a circular building consultant. And this is my colleague, it's Erwin, and he's going to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. About 15 years ago, I was standing in your shoes, studying built environment, and I was really thinking that I was going to change the world by building very nice, beautiful buildings. Well, at that time, we were being taught how to engineer a building, how to build a building, a little bit of how to manage it, but that was about it. But not at all a focus on the total lifespan of a project. So in my life after studying, that's where I've learned how to really change the environments that we are studying, that we are taking care of. And so that's the learning curve I've had after moving away from school. So yeah, from origin I'm a project manager, and nowadays I'm more leading our data and technology team. So that's moving away from bricks and using data to create environments with an impact. And yeah, we are standing here in name of our company, Draaijer Partners. And we are not just focusing on just building the buildings, but we are a strategic partner in creating healthy and smart environments. And in a nutshell, and I keep this very, very small, but we are based in Utrecht and in Groningen. We have about 28 years of experience, and of which about 25 years we're mainly focused on the building part of and on organizations. We have an innovation platform where we are continuously looking at the edges of our industry, how we can make little improvements within the quite traditional industry we work for. Yeah, we are part of the Draaijer Group, which are several companies that are all taking part in different stages of a life cycle of the project. So our mission, and that's because we think construction and building has a very large impact on our resources, but also on the way we feel and how the organizations are developing. And that's why we feel we take a big part and a role in taking our clients by their hand and try to improve on the way the impact the building has on their people and on their organizations. So that's why we are not just doing what the client asks us to do, but we are adding value to the projects. And we do that on the 5 benefits, which is mostly the social part. So we feel a building should stimulate the social activity within a space. It needs to be healthy for us as people, healthy for the organization in order to also achieve the business goals, but also healthy for our world, our environment, and the people that are living around it. Well, energy, generating energy in an efficient and a sustainable way, but also reducing the energy consumption. So, you know, what we are not using, you don't need to produce. Circularity, where we're standing for, so that's circularity is a way of looking at our materials, but circularity is also a way to look at processes and how we all think on impact on business models and stuff like that. So when we are talking about the circular approach, it goes further than just looking at circular materials, but we are looking at how we can move the entire industry to start thinking differently. And obviously smart. And we think smart data technology is not a goal, but it is a very helpful tool to make us understand how the building and the users are interacting with each other. And when we start to understand those, then buildings can adapt to the needs of the people that use it and vice versa. How we do this, like I said before, usually we were giving advice how you build a building. We were managing it and handing over the keys. Sometimes we were about 2 weeks after we said, you know, you're still happy? And then we said bye. And now we are seeing the facility management part as a very important step and has a large focus for us to not just build the building, but also help our clients to get the most out of their spaces. Make sure that, because the facility management, the services around the building have a large impact on our experience, how we feel. And in order to do that, in order to make it adaptable and also understand how things are happening, and also do it in an efficient way, so it doesn't especially cost extra money, but it will actually just be lower cost with higher quality. So yeah, so just as a little reminder, you know, our construction industry has a very large impact on the waste we all produce. 50% of the all raw material usage is going into industry, and it has a large impact on CO2 emissions. So when we're looking at the Paris goals, this is quite an interesting profession that you guys are choosing to go into, because you can make a large impact. And if we look at a lot of projects we are working on ourselves, the projects that our clients desire are mostly the ones on the left side. We want it quick and dirty, we want it cheap, and then we throw it away. And we are mostly looking after, well, our vision and our mission is to build more of the right side, the Zippos, which we built for our entire lifespan. It costs a little bit more on the front, but if you look at the complete life cycle, it actually costs less money, you have more quality in your hands, and you can reuse the materials. So, and that's, you know, where we're gonna be talking to you later. So why are we still choosing the left one? It is an odd thing, I think, and I'm very wondering why you guys think this is the reason.
So, our message in the beginning wasn't a very positive one, but hard to tell, but we are very positive-minded. And the reason why we think this is necessary to make sustainable and circular buildings is because we think that it can create a place that increases awareness for well-being, and it's for both people and planet. We're convinced that everything we do in our project management, we can make a difference in those things. And we want to think that we can build a place we can give on to the next generation and not leave a mess for the next generation. And maybe it inspires you. A building can inspire you. Where you're here, I think this is an inspiring building. So with that in mind, that's how I take on our projects. And we are wondering, what do you think the biggest challenges we see in creating circular and sustainable environments? You're well in school now, so you have a little knowledge. What do you think is the most challenging? Convincing investors to investing. Yes, that's a great point, and it's true. Yeah. Yeah, great point. Great point. It's a very complex world, so investors not only in it, are in it for the long term. Sometimes they create something and they just want to see it as an investment for a short period of time. So they're not interested in the long-term investment, and it makes the talking of sustainability harsh. But it's a great point. Yeah. So anybody else? Challenges to build sustainable and circular buildings? Yeah. And do you have an example for that? Yeah, yeah. So we need production woods. That's growing enough wood so we can build everything out of it. Yeah, it's a good point, but we also see that there is more than enough technology right now that isn't used because of the money statement or the not knowing statement or not interested statement. So, but we need more wood, and nowadays the price are rising of wood, so that makes it less interesting. Also, again, for investors to invest in wood buildings, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Also a great point. People don't like change. I don't know, everybody can hear it, but yeah, it's true. Yeah, people are afraid of change, and they think, well, I don't think this project is suited for big change. So let's do this one like we do it all the times before, and maybe the next one. That's what we hear a lot. Yeah, yeah, great. Anybody else in the back? Arguments or challenges? What do you think? Yeah. Sorry? Oh. Yeah. That has to change, you think, or is that the challenge ahead? Optimized. Yeah. Yeah. Solving the problem. Yeah. Well, that's a good point again. Concrete lobby is huge. It's a big sector, so they're very afraid that they get pushed out of the construction sector. So they're pushing anything to say, well, we can be a sustainable product. And there are solutions in concrete that are more sustainable than others. So that's a transition we have to make. And we have to think of new ways to build construction. Maybe wood is the answer, maybe not. Let's see. Well, nice to have your thoughts on it.
And just being curious, in the way you guys are being taught how to engineer a building, I envisage, and is there a difference in how to engineer a regular building and a building that is suitable in a circular way? So you can disassemble at a later stage, you can produce in a factory, for example. Is that things that are being taught nowadays? Feel so? Because that's what we were not taught to, and I think that's why you guys are being the new generation that is going to help us making this happen. So, yeah, challenges we see all the different parts. I think within a building, we need to look at how we can make most out of the renewable energies that are around us, and there are a lot of different variables that are deciding which one is the right choice for each project. But we also need to aim on how we can recycle our materials on a premium way. So not just use the raw material, but how we can use it on, just for example, creating high-end play gardens with the wings of a windmill. So windmills are very sustainable. The material where it's made from, not so much. So how we can also make use of those kind of materials. This is not the best way, but it is a way of giving new life to the materials we have in hand. New business models. I think this is maybe one of the most important ones to focus on. So how we can pursue the investors to make different decisions. And by different decisions is also, but not just different decisions, but it's also different ways how market parties, people of factories that are manufacturing materials, they also need to think on different business models. Maybe not just selling the materials, but leasing them or renting them out for a small amount of period. That's good for keeping the resources within the loop. It's good for our clients because they are not just buying a product for the rest of their time. For example, interior, the chairs that are standing here, maybe over 2 years, we want couches here, or we want to be standing, or we want to have that flexibility to change when you guys have different desires and wishes. Our environment around us needs to change, and that's why we need to also look at different ways how we contract parties and different questions we ask. Natural capital, I've already heard it. Production woods. Why are we now we have plenty of space. It's not a bad thing to just build a lot of trees. I think on this campus, I think we also can have more trees. And so, yeah, it's not a bad investment at all, but someone needs to take ownership of it. My other question earlier, we need to design our products differently. We can use different materials. We need to think on what to do with them later on. We need to refurbish them. We want to make something else from it. We want to, you need to disassemble it. What are the sizes? How can you transport it? These are all things that you need to be thinking of from the outset of the project. We see a lot of times at projects of clients, somewhere halfway the project, an architect says, maybe it's nice to do a bit of circular things, you know, or a client, we want to do something with sustainability. Well, when that comes halfway the project, when the budget is already set, the planning is already, you have already asked the architect what to draw, you have already appointed a contractor. Trust me, we call it in the Dutch, you put lipstick on a monkey, you know, like yes, you have a good story, you can do something with the marketing, but is it really going to change the world? Nah, not so much. And the supply chain collaboration. So we think we need to work differently together, and that's where we have a big role, because we are most of the times the first person that talks with our clients. So we need to formulate and describe the questions we put further in the supply chain. We need to challenge them in a different way. We can't just punish them by not delivering on brief requirements. We need to give them more space to think with us. We need to not just put all the risk to the market parties. No, we need to carry the risk together. And that's when we are starting to collaborate. And that's where we have a large focus on, and how we can bring all the different competences, because the new world is more about getting a good mix of competences, of people that are thinking from a different angle than we think in functions. You know, you are the manager, you are the engineer. That's not what's going to bring us further. And then a little insight of our our circular approach. So, you know, where do we start? Well, the first start is we sit next to the client and we say, you know, what do you actually want? You know, what are your business goals? What drives your company? What drives your school? You know, where are you good in? And from that on, we have a very large role in not just doing what our clients tells us, but inspiring them, showing them what the world is all about, what's all possible, and why it is now very important to think a bit differently than someone just asked us the question, can you build a school for us? Oh, so what kind of school? Yeah, it's about 8,000 square meters, and we are an agricultural school, by the way, and no, it's very important information, and we want to drill through that to understand what do you really want. And building support. So we are not inspiring just our client and the manager that is appointing us, but we are inspiring the entire business. We are giving lectures to the projects and schools we are working on. We are talking with you guys. I mean, you guys are the new generation, and I've already heard very good suggestions. What needs to change? Our clients are not telling us this, and be aware of this. And building support is not just by talking to people, inspiring them, but also showing them ways how you can overcome certain difficulties. And and then the next very important step, that's for Simon again.
Yes, the first two steps. I want to refer to the video, setting a goal in front of the project. When we start with a project, the goal is to get a school or a building or something else. But setting a goal on sustainability and circularity is very, very important, and build support on that. So that's the main things we have to do. And the other main thing by setting goals is looking at what we have instead of what we need. Because we have so much in the world dug up. If you see here, you can use everything you see. And most of the time when we start a project, they think of, oh, we need a new building, we need a new this, a new that. Just a story of today. This morning, a colleague comes to me and said, Simon, do you have an example for a circular garage thing where you can put your bicycle in? And I said, well, no, not particularly, but what is your process? Why do you want it? Well, it's for an investor that wants a sustainable campus, so they put the bicycles in it. I said, well, you can purchase one on Marktplaats or on internet, second-handedly. Is that an option? Never thought of that. We go and search for new things. But sustainable ways and circular ways are thinking of things that already exist. You can use them again. So that's the main thing and the main focus on the start of the project. What do you have, and can you still use it in the future? Well, and you have to look with new perspective to value. The money question was a good question because we like to put everything on money. What does it cost and what is it going to deliver? But there are much more values you can discover because health is a value. We don't put that in money. We don't say, well, health for our colleagues is much this worth. So all the value you have to consider when you start a project and put a price on that. Because if you make an unhealthy building, it's going to cost you a lot more than the savings you do on not spending money on health. So, and there's also, and that's very clear, technical part of circular and sustainability. So, when you build a building, you have to remind yourself that it's going to last there for a long time. The most circular way or the most sustainable way by getting rid of the building is to use it again for something else. But you have to think of that because you can use a home or a school. You can make a home out of it, or from a school you can make apartments or something else. But you have to think of that in your design. You have to be ready for it. So that's life cycle thinking. The wood question, make something out of wood. It's a good way of you can reuse wood over and over again. If this home ever is going away, you can use the wood for something else. You can make a table out of it, a chair, some other building. So keep that in mind in your whole design process, and make sure that you're always thinking about the life cycle and make it as long as possible. Not only for the total of a building, but also on the material. That's a very important question. So in a project, we are used to making 1,001 decisions. Are we going to take a white chair or a gray chair? Going to make a column gray or blue, or going to make a ceiling or not? So in all the decisions, there is a sustainable way of doing it and a non-sustainable way of doing it. And the only way we can make a right decision on whether something is sustainable is if we can measure it. If we can measure how sustainable a product is. And the problem nowadays is that in the most products we can't really measure it. For buildings, there are certain methods. There's the building circularity indicator that tells you for a whole building how circular it is, but it's on a total scale, and it's not going to help us in making decisions on small things. So it's very important to think about how we can measure sustainability, so we can make the right decisions. We need a lot of thinking about that, and that's a nice question for you guys. If you go into the construction world, how can we do that? How can we do this? This is a big question in our industry. And another thing is if you put a building and nowadays they say, well, you have to put all the records for your products and you have to deliver them to the owner and the owner keep them. And if we come by our client and say, well, you have a building, do you have data on that? Well, we get a big pile of papers and 90% isn't accurate. It's long gone, it's not available, it's dramatic. But if we want to reuse materials, it's very good to know what materials are used in a building. So we have to put data on that, and that's where the data comes in. This is important in the whole process, from designing to building to using to make sure the data is accurate at the time we're going to dispose it. And not only on the materials or on the products, but also on connection methods. We can't see how this column is connected to the ceiling. Is there data on that? or do we have to look and figure it out? Most of the time we have to demolish something to see what's under it. And when you demolish something, you can't use it again. So make sure you make data, a material passport, and write down how the connection is made. Make sure that's in the material passport. The next thing on putting everybody in the good drive is to communicate on sustainable labels. There are different sustainable labels. BREEAM is the well-known sustainable label. WELL is a sustainable label. I don't know what's happening over there, but a lot of police. If you communicate on that, everybody is on the same page. Everybody knows we're doing it for a certain label, and it's not really about the label, but it puts everybody in the good mindset. And it's also building support in the project for, okay, we want to be a sustainable project. So this is a good thing to do in your project, to make sure everybody has the will to make the good decisions and sustainable decisions in a project.
Yeah, and then we get to smart and adaptive buildings. And what has that to do with circularity? Well, it's all about making most about what we got. So our desires, our wishes, the needs we need in our environment, they change continuously. But our buildings, usually we build for 30, 40, 50 years. So we need to deal with different types of people, different types of usage, and not over just longer time by just having flexibility in your building to rebuild something after 10 years, but also during the day. Some spaces we want to use to give lectures, or we want to make mock-up models, or we are active, we need to study, we have different desires in terms of temperature, in different types of lighting. So, who from you got like smart home kind of things, or gadgets with Apple Home or whatever? Anyone? Still students, but it will come. But on utility buildings, this is not so normal. We are living in an industry where everyone keeps their data for themselves, because data is valuable, very valuable. But when we don't share it, we don't combine it, data is useless. And so we are all the time looking at how can we make data available from buildings, from organizations, also data that you got. How can we combine that to better understand what you guys need, what the organizations need, and also how the building is reacting on our behavior. So some classes are filled completely full in beginning of the year, but during the year, spaces are being less filled. So we are actually building buildings, and not everyone, but we are building buildings for the first weeks of a school year. And then and we're all complaining in the first weeks, it's so busy, you know, we don't have space. And a few weeks into the school year, we are just with 10 people sitting in a big room where that fits easily 15 people. So how can we just also build for what we actually need? And then we need to measure, not just measure materials, but also measure what drives us. What do you actually feel when you're entering a toilet and it's disgusting? Why can you just not just give feedback that the cleaner comes there and cleans it? No, but no one is going to a reception to say, you know, it's not nice. So we can make it much easier for us. And so as an example, and that's what we do with our data and technology team, we use data from systems, from installations such as CO2, temperature, are we in a building or not? There's a lot of data in Wi-Fi that can calculate quite precisely where we are, how many of us are in the building. We can use it not just for space planning, but we can also use it for when there are problems or there is fire. We know exactly where there are movements. So we can get much more out of the data that we use now. And for example, we combine that data with school data, with your rostering. So when a teacher is ill, why the cleaner doesn't need to clean the room later on if we don't use this space. So these are all things we are using data to make the building adaptable and to the people, and let people understand how their behavior impacts their environment. So it goes both ways. So it's all about this integral approach where we're not just looking at one thing, but we need to look at the whole broad scope of a project. And that's the technical side, that's the objective side, but it's also the way we work together. And we are thinking in the beginning, what do we now need to do to make it easier for us 2 years later, 5 years later, but also 20, 30 years later? And so this is all, a nice story, but what do you actually do? Well, this is an example of a sweaterhuis. It's a Frisian term. It's built in Friesland. Anyone of you been in Friesland? Probably not. Well, it's a nice place. A lot of cows. It's very flat, but there is more space than here. But so the nice thing about sweaterhuis is that we changed the first way we procure and we get to a builder. We didn't tell them exactly what to build. We just said, whatever you do, 40% needs to be reused materials. And I don't care what you do. So it's a building where the people that operate bridges are positioned. And so everything, all the materials they reused are from their waterworks. So everything that comes out of their main operations, about rebuilding bridges, about everything next to the rivers, all those materials are brought back to this building. And it's highly, it would be very good for you to just take a look at this project, because it's inspiring. There are a lot of nice videos on the internet, and you will be amazed what kind of materials are brought back in there. And make something really beautiful from it. And it's not just, and it really fits their type of company as well, because it also educates them and everything is visible. So it also, I think, the educational bit of circularity is also very important, I think, because most of us, we don't know what's possible. We don't know what's around us. And by just presenting it, showing it, we all learn from it. And then we got the Zone College, and Zone College is one of my projects that where I was not just involved in designing and building it, but it was a design, build, maintain, operate contract. So we were actually not just looking for a builder, but a contractor that was supporting us to really build something that's good for 30 years. And that's where we built like a smart building dashboard. So we said, what's the main goal of a smart school? It's not like an edge we stuff with sensoring, and we're just gonna see how nice it's gonna be. No, it's a school, So we already need to build like a building management system. So why not just make that data available? We are already headlighting with movement detection. Why don't we just use that data? And we had an app tool to register whether students were present at the schools, what the rostering is. So just by combining that data, we got like a smart building dashboard, and that's a tool we use every day to optimize their processes, the way they plan their schools, and also to make strategic decisions when to move away from certain buildings or get more space. And one of the cool things there, which is also very circular thought, is it's an agricultural school. So what's important for them? We built a purifying greenhouse. So all the wastewater from the building is being purified by plants, and that they are actually being taught during their classes how to maintain them, how to harvest them. And so that greenhouse is purifying the water, and that brings it back into the loop, and the water is being reused. So we don't have any attachment to any sewage systems at all. So these are just little examples how you are focusing on which sustainable things to implement in your projects, and that also fits the ambitions of your client. And then we are going to an office building.
Yeah, I'm looking at the time because we're almost at the close, I think. Is there time for one more project, or is it? Yeah, okay. Well, then we leave it here. Thank you for joining. We thought it was nice to do. A little bit different for us because we had to talk in English. That's not what we do on a regular basis, but I hope it was understandable. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Yeah, so thank you all. Again, some familiar faces for coming. And for you guys, I have a lovely bottle of wine and some copies of our magazine. So yeah, also thank you guys for coming. I think it was quite interactive, so I think it was very interesting. If you want my future points, go to me or Emma at the top with the scanners. And I also